The key to my worthless inheritance felt heavy in my hand as I stood before the old vineyard's rustic gates. Behind me, I could still hear my sister Claire's laughter echoing from the lawyer's office where our parents' will had just been read. "Have fun with your dirt farm," she called out as she waved her $50 million inheritance check. "Maybe you can sell grape jelly at the farmer's market. I'm Elizabeth Morgan, and this is how my parents' attempt to punish me led to the discovery that would change everything." The Morgan family had been California wine royalty for 3 generations. Our label, Morgan Estates, was considered one of Napa Valley's crown jewels. But this property, the original Morgan Vineyard, hadn't produced wine in decades. My grandfather had abandoned it in the 1980s, moving operations to more prestigious land. "Elizabeth," my mother had said during our last conversation, "if you insist on studying viticulture instead of business like your sister, you can have the old vineyard. Claire will handle the real family business." Now, walking through rows of neglected vines, I understood why they thought this was a punishment. The trellises were collapsing. The irrigation system was ancient. The small winery building looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. But I saw something else. Potential. My phone buzzed. "Claire again. Just sold another 10,000 cases of the Reserve Cabernet. What's your production looking like?" "Oh wait." I ignored her. 4 years studying viticulture at UC Davis, followed by apprenticeships at vineyards in France and Italy, had taught me that great wine starts in the soil. And this soil was special. I knelt down, running my fingers through the earth. The texture, the mineral content, it was perfect. The kind of terroir that vintners dream about. "You see it too, don't you?" I spun around to find Manuel, the old groundskeeper, watching me. He was in his 70s now, but his eyes were sharp. "The soil," I said. "It's incredible. Why did grandfather abandon this place?" Manuel's face darkened. "Your grandfather, he cared more about image than wine. When Napa land closer to the highway became available, he moved. Said this place was too remote, too hard to reach. But he didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Manuel hesitated. "Your grandmother made me promise never to tell anyone. But she said if you ever came here, if you showed real interest in the land." He pulled an old key from his pocket. "There's something you need to see." The key opened a door I hadn't noticed, half hidden behind overgrown vines. Stone steps led down into darkness. "The old cellar," Manuel explained. "But not just any cellar." We descended into cool darkness, our foam lights casting shadows. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of earth and something else. Something I'd spent years learning to recognize. Manuel stopped at the bottom of the stairs and switched on an ancient light switch. I gasped. Stretching before us were rows upon rows of wine racks. But not empty racks. They were filled with bottles. Hundreds of them. Thousands. "Your grandmother's secret collection," Manuel said softly. "Every bottle from the vineyard's golden years, 1950 to 1980. 30 years of perfect vintages, before your grandfather moved the operation." I stepped forward, hand trembling as I wiped dust from one of the labels. Morgan Vineyard 1962. Not Morgan Estates. This was before the rebranding. These were the original wines from when my great-grandfather first planted the vines. "The perfect combination," Manuel continued. "The soil, the elevation, the morning fog. Your grandmother knew this land produced something special. She didn't trust your grandfather with these bottles. Said someday someone would understand their true value." I carefully lifted one of the bottles, holding it up to the light. The color was still perfect, the fill level exactly right. If these wines had been properly stored all these years. My phone buzzed again. A message from James Chen, my old professor from UC Davis. "Heard about the inheritance. That vineyard has incredible potential. Call me. I know some investors who might be interested." I looked around the cellar again, my mind racing. These bottles alone could be worth millions to the right collectors. But more importantly, they proved what this land could produce. I turned to Manuel. "Did my parents know about this cellar?" He shook his head. "Your grandmother made me seal it up before she died. Said to wait for someone who cared about the wine, not just the money." I ran my hand along the dusty bottles, thinking of Claire in her designer office, selling mass-produced wine to distributors. She knew the business side, but she'd never gotten her hands dirty in a vineyard. Never learned what made wine truly special. My phone lit up with another taunting message from her. Settling into your new shack? Don't worry when you give up. I'll buy the land for storage space. I smile, thinking of the treasure trove surrounding me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't immediate. Sometimes it's letting people think they've won while you discover what they were too blind to see. Manuel, I said, I'm going to need your help. We have work to do. He grinned. I've been waiting 30 years to hear someone say that. I took one last look at the cellar before we climbed back up. Claire had gotten $50 million in cash and stock. But I had something better, a secret that would rock the wine world. And I was just getting started. The next 3 months were a blur of careful planning and meticulous documentation. Each bottle in the cellar had to be photographed, cataloged, and authenticated. My old professor, James Chen, connected me with the top wine authenticators in the country. This is unprecedented, the lead authenticator whispered, examining a 1955 bottle. Perfect storage conditions for over 60 years. Do you understand what these wines could be worth? I did. But the bottles weren't for sale, not yet. They were proof of what this land could produce, evidence that would help me rebuild something extraordinary. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Claire. Board meeting today. Just approved a new mass production facility, selling more cases than ever. How's the grape farm? Dad would be so proud of how I'm growing his company. I let her gloat, let her think I was struggling with my worthless inheritance while she played corporate wine mogul. The truth would come soon enough. Then came the day that changed everything. The Wine Spectator's lead critic arrived to authenticate a 1962 bottle from the cellar. My God, he breathed after the first sip. This is history in a glass. The complexity, the balance, this vineyard produced this. I nodded, watching his reaction carefully. Every bottle in that cellar came from these vines, this soil. He took another sip, closing his eyes. I've been reviewing wines for 30 years. This is among the finest I've ever tasted. Would you be willing to put that in writing? The article hit like a bombshell. Lost wine treasure discovered. The greatest California wines you've never heard of. The story detailed the hidden cellar, the perfect storage conditions, and most importantly, the exceptional quality of the wines. Expert after expert confirmed. These weren't just good wines. They were potentially the greatest California wines ever produced. My phone nearly exploded. Wine collectors, investors, and journalists all wanted access to the legendary lost vintages. But the most satisfying call came from Claire. What the hell is this? She demanded. The board is going crazy. Why didn't you tell us about the cellar? Why would I? I asked calmly. You got the millions, remember? I just got the worthless dirt farm. The next week, I organized a private tasting for the world's top wine critics and collectors. Each bottle opened from the cellar confirmed what I already knew. This land had produced liquid gold. One collector pulled me aside. Name your price. For the cellar, for the land, for everything. I smiled. It's not for sale. But I am looking for investors to help restore the vineyard to its former glory. Within days, I had offers totaling over $100 million from investors eager to be part of the vineyard's rebirth. Unlike my sister's mass production operation, we would focus on small batch, exceptional wines that honored the land's potential. Claire and the Morgan Estates board demanded an emergency meeting. You have to sell us the cellar, Claire insisted. Those wines are part of the Morgan legacy. No, I corrected her. They're part of my legacy. The one you all thought was worthless. We'll sue, she threatened. Those wines belong to Morgan Estates. I pulled out a document, my grandmother's will, which Manuel had safeguarded for years. Actually, grandmother left explicit instructions. The cellar and its contents belong solely to the grandchild who understands that great wine comes from the earth, not the boardroom. Claire's face went pale. She knew about the cellar all along. She knew everything, including who really cared about wine and who just cared about money. The renovation of the vineyard began immediately. Manuel helped me identify the original rootstock, and we carefully propagated new vines from the survivors. Modern technology merged with traditional methods, all focused on one goal: recreating the conditions that had produced those extraordinary wines. 1 year later, I stood in my new tasting room, a beautiful space that showcased both the historic bottles and our new vintages. The original Morgan Vineyard label had been reborn, with a waiting list of collectors and connoisseurs eager to secure allocations. Morgan Estates mass market wines were still selling well in supermarkets, but serious wine lovers now spoke of them dismissively. Not like the original Vineyard, they'd say. Not since Elizabeth Morgan restored it. Claire called one last time. Daddy always said I was the smart one, she said, her voice bitter. That I understood business while you were playing in the dirt. Dad was wrong about a lot of things, I replied, including what makes truly great wine. I hung up and walked out to my vineyard. The evening fog was rolling in, that same magical fog that had helped create those legendary vintages. Manuel stood among the vines, checking the grapes with the care of someone who understood that greatness starts in the soil. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. She always said the land would choose its true heir. I touched one of the grape clusters gently. Our first vintage since the renovation would be ready for harvest soon. Early samples suggested it would be exceptional. My phone buzzed with a text from a famous wine critic. Just heard Morgan Estates is up for sale. Claire's stepping down as CEO. Any interest in buying your sister's company? I laughed, thinking of Claire's taunts about my worthless inheritance. The original vineyard was now worth more than Morgan Estates' entire operation, and our wines commanded prices that made Claire's mass market bottles look like juice boxes. No, I typed back. I already have everything I need. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's proving yourself right, and sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones that others are too blind to see. I looked out over my vineyard as the sun set, thinking of my grandmother's wisdom in waiting for someone who understood that true value isn't just about money. It's about respecting what the land can give you, if you just take the time to listen. The fog rolled in, wrapping around the vines like a blessing. Tomorrow, we continue the work of making this place great again. But for now, I just stood there, holding a glass of the 1962 vintage, toasting the grandmother who knew that some inheritances are worth more than money, and some dirt farms are worth more than millions.